All righty, we are starting here. It's just loading, so give us a second as we get this started. All right, welcome. Today, I'm joined with Charles Keene, the CEO and president of KCTR, along with my coworker Ariel. Today, we are talking with Charles about our process for our MVV, our mission, vision, values in that education lingo, using another acronym that pretty, yeah.
Yeah,
But Charles, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, in case someone doesn't already know your face?
yeah. Hi, everyone. It is great to be with you and excited for this Facebook Live. My name is Charles King, and I am the founder, president, and CEO of the Kansas City Teacher Residency, and have been in this work for now 7 years. And prior to that, have been a lifelong educator working as a teacher and a leader in charter school space and for the most recent role prior to this was middle school principal. So yeah, excited to be here with you all and talk a little bit more about our journey to our new mission, vision, and values.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Andrea, for bringing us in, and thank you, Charles. So our work has grown over the years, and I mean, I personally think, and I think we would all say that we do a lot. So can you take us, Charles, back to day one? So we're going to rewind and go back in time. So the
Yeah.
day one of KCTR, and why did it start, and how we have grown since then?
Yeah, great question. So the origin story of KCTR is really grew out of a need within the greater Kansas City community, right? I think as a middle school principal, something that I've always was grappling with was where to find talent. Like, how do we get talent that not only just generally, but then also talent that's willing to do the work in my school and committed to my students. And that was something that we were hearing loud and clear within the Kansas City metro area, where superintendents, principals were really looking for where do we not only just get talent, but where do we get quality talent? And through the research that the Kauffman Foundation had been doing, and looking at what's available in the ecosystem, there was an opportunity to bring in a different model. And so there had been Teach for America that's here and working in the community. There are higher education other organizations that are feeding into the talent pipeline. But the teacher residency model is a newer model that wasn't yet birthed in the community. And so the Kauffman Foundation wanted to provide an investment and opportunity for an organization to launch in the space. And so starting in July 2015, came on board to really think with the community around how can we design a new teacher preparation model that would provide the schools within the city with the talent that it needs to really support and grow students in the community. And so starting in July 2015 until we launched for the first cohort in June 2016, we developed this pipeline. And so we had 9 school partners at the time. We had a university partner, and we collaborated with the National Center for Teacher Residencies to really co-design not only like our recruitment and selection model, our coursework, what are the expectations of the partner school, and with our new program. And we really built what I think is a solid model for what happens when teacher preparation programs and schools work together to really think about how do we prepare individuals not only ready to teach within the context, but also support them so they are retained within the community. And so since then, we have been fortunate to grow and expand from 2016. And so, as I said, we started with 9 school partners, traditional districts and charters. And now we work with over 20 different charter schools and districts across the greater metro area. And that has been, that growth is because that the talent need within our community continues to be something that is at the forefront. I mean, we're hearing about it right now, right? Like with teacher shortages. And so we know that there's a true need, and what the residency model provides is a good partnership in working to think through sustainable talent strategies for districts, and not working to do something that's outside of what our partners need.
That's so important for that work to be based in the community so that it is sustainable for the long term. Can you talk a little bit more about the growth in the equity journey of, it's always been based in the need of what do the students, what do the people in Kansas City, like in our area, in our community need? So that's always been a central focus, but that has deepened and changed over time, especially with the lens of equity. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, so we've really been always committed to working with schools and communities that have been historically under-resourced and marginalized. And so knowing that if we are truly about the work of creating change, sustainable change within the greater Kansas City community and beyond, it had to start with, the students who needed us, the students who were not receiving the resources and needed great teachers. And so we wanted to make sure that we were strategically partnering with schools and communities and kids, right? And so that's where that's always been at the core of our work. And I think, like, as I've grew in my journey, so has the growth of the organization, and really thinking through not only with kids, but then also like teachers. I think what I have learned throughout is that, how to make sure that, how do we make sure that there's equity within teacher preparation, and how do we ensure that we are meeting the needs of all of our pre-service educators so that they can be prepared and ready and sustained in the field, because this is a hard profession. And we know that, I mean, you look at the statistics across the state of Missouri and in the state of Kansas. I mean, in Missouri, less than 10% of educators who are being prepared at institutions are people of color. And in Kansas, it's even more drastic, where it's like less than 7%. And so, why is that happening, and how do we mitigate those things? And as an organization, how do we work to support individuals, especially people of color who are going through programs, to be ready and sustained and successful?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charles. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Have to think through that whole lens of not just getting people, but keeping them there, which the residency model really focuses on. Yeah, could you talk a little bit more? I want to talk about the mission, vision, values. So you already stated it's been a central piece of who we are, always, to be focused on equity. That's been part of the drawing of why this residency even exists, because there was a gap in equitable education in the city. But through that, we've grown deeper. Could you talk a little bit more about the ways that we've already grown beyond our original version of the mission, vision, values, and now our new documents, how they lean into us being more visionary with that equitable education becoming a reality? So where do you see that we've already grown, and then where do you see us headed? How does this draw us to be visionary when it comes to equitable education in 2022 and beyond?
Great question. So I think there's I think for years we've talked a lot about, like, how do we create space spaces for students to feel a center, like a place of belonging and feel welcomed in schools, right? We talked a lot about like classroom culture and climate and creating that space for kids within the community, whether, like culturally relevant pedagogy, right? We talk about that as it relates to kids, but we haven't talked about that as it relates to like adults in school and school culture, right? And at KCTR from day one, we have always placed DEI at the center of our coursework and programming. And that's something we've always talked about and we did. And I think over the course of time, what I've come to realize is that there's actually work that we have to do as adults in creating a space that where adults feel belonging and feel welcomed within our schools. But it was hard to really talk about that within our schools when we still had work to do internally, and even thinking about like the work within even our cohorts. And so we had done a lot of reading around like identity. We've done some identity work. We have partnered with different work within the community around we did a DEI accelerator with Promise 54. And so we had done some learning around just like where are the opportunities for us to grow deeper in this space. And I think we at one point we were doing an examination of our current mission and our current vision and then the values. And I think what we realized was like there was a gap. We started talking about like how what we were trying to move away from, we were actually perpetuating through the language we were using. And so when we looked at like, dominant culture norms and language within, everything that we've been conditioned to be thinking about in education, like we were speaking to that in our original mission, vision, and values. And really not thinking about like, how do we really create space, not only really center students and center community in a way of not that we are coming in to be the heroes, but really imbuing the beauty and the value of what was already in our communities and seeing like, how can we just live that out into fullness? And so we knew that in order for us to really do this work, we had to come back and really look to like, how do we bring equity to the forefront within our mission and our vision, and then within our values? Like, how do we create school systems change for students and also for teachers? How do we how do we ensure that it is, that when we talk about the educators who are coming through our program, that are it's not around, this constant cycle of you have to go, you're driving towards results and being only results oriented, but really being thinking about like this whole idea of growth and cultivation and really driving towards what we really want to see within individuals, right?
Yeah.
And so we knew that we needed to really take a step back and pull up and revise what we had in front of us.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
so essential, I think, for the methodology. If we want to have an equitable outcome, the method that we get there has to be in alignment with where we're going. The means or the ends don't justify the means. They need to all be aligned there. We want to have this. We can't be perpetuating dominant white supremacy culture, and then somehow hope will end up somewhere different.
Yeah.
Which I think is so essential there to point out.
Yeah. So with having said that, and so my next question for you, Charles, is kind of, there has to be a process to this, right? It wasn't like we woke up and we said, boom, we're going to change and we're done and we moved on to the next thing. There's always a process and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So I'm curious to kind of know if you could talk a little bit more about what that process was like, what it was like for you, being the CEO and founder, to hear that, hey, we're going to have this refresh, we're going to do this. And what does that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, quite honestly, like it was hard, right? Because the initial mission, vision, and values were created in isolation, right? Like it was not community informed. It was, Charles sitting in the cubicle, um, thinking like, this sounds great. And this is like, oh, this is what I love to do within my school, and realize that, there was, it was a necessary check, but it was also a hard one. And so I think what we realized and what we came to realize is that it could not be done internally. Like we had to bring in a fresh lens. And so we needed to bring in someone who had expertise in leading organizations through a mission, vision, values rewrite, and can really keep community at the center and involve a number of different stakeholders.
Yeah.
And so like that was like at the core of what we were looking for. And we cast a wide net to try to find the right person to work with our organization. Because by that time, right, I think at the time we started, what do we have, like we had 20 people, and now we're at 23. So like, sorry, y'all, like throw a little COVID in there, pandemic, and that's, it's, you forget how long it's been. But we were fortunate to find Dr. Kevin Sansbury and Kevra, and partnered with them to lead us through this work. And we were fortunate because his process was very deliberate and methodical. And unlike where we started, in just getting us going, we really took the time to really listen and lean in to the multitude of different stakeholders. We had a project team that was formed and created around this. We had an opportunity to do a listening tour with our residents, our graduates, our alumni. We had school partners involved in this. We sent out a survey to the masses where we got like critical friends and funders, and we wanted to hear from all the people that were touched by KCTR what exactly they saw our mission, vision, and values being, and what's at the core. And through that messy process, we went through. It was messy. Y'all know it was messy.
It was long. It was, I would love to hear about that process and how long, and rounds of feedback as well.
But yeah, it's human. It's messy.
Yeah.
It's human, right? Like, and so like Dr. Sansbury was able to craft and pull together the words that he heard from all of the stakeholders to go through. I believe I think we ended with 4.5, maybe 5 rounds of feedback and input from various stakeholders. And I think what we came to find out about ourselves as an organization is that, we all know words matter, but words really, really mattered in how we developed our, the missions and the vision. And did we really mean systems level, or did we really mean X? And what do we mean by community? What is community? It's who are we trying to impact? And it was, for us, it was a good way to really think through around who are our stakeholders and what is the impact we really want to have. And coming out of working from home and being fully remote as an organization for 1.5 years, I think this was a really good reset for us to align on how to make sure we're swimming in the right direction, together.
Oh yeah.
And I think after, over the course of the last couple of years, I think it was really easy to really veer off course. And this is a really good way to truly reground us. And not only the people, the 23 people within the organization, but even the board, right? Like to know that the board was invested in our new mission, vision, values, to know that like our stakeholders and that are truly our residents and our grads and alumni can feel as though they were a part of the process. And while, everyone had the opportunity, we know we had like a core team that was really helping to guide this work from start to finish.
Yeah, which super impactful to have those voices and obviously impactful for those who were involved. Could you talk a little bit about the impact though for people who weren't involved or, hey, I'm considering applying. Cool. Y'all change some of your documents. Like it sounds like a very corporate-y thing that you go through. You update
Yeah.
these internal documents, go through all these rounds. But what does it really mean for us? Because we didn't just choose the right words. There was also reflection through that that's going to impact where we're headed and having more clarity. So could you just talk a little bit about that, of the impact of us making this process, any impact you've seen so far, and where that's kind of leading us to the future?
Yeah. I mean, always say that like your vision is, it sets the direction, the North Star for where we're trying to go as an organization. And from before, right, like I think the initial one was around like, how do we become like the model, the exemplar in the country, right? Like, it sounds great and it's grandiose. But the new vision is really talking about like, how do we partner with school systems to build equitable communities, right? And like really zoning in on our equity work and our focus, and really looking at like in this partnership piece, right? The partnership is key. That is not KCTR coming in to say that we're going to do this. It's not saying that we have the best ideas and how to do this, but it's really, we're seeing ourselves as like, how do we collaborate? How do we partner? How do we be at, like, we want to be at the table to work with school systems, to work with communities, to really like, how do we do this together and collectively? Because that, if we're going to keep our kids at the center of this work, like it's going to take all of us, right? Like schools can't redesign and come up with new school models without, really thinking about like, okay, we can redesign and come up with school models and think about the teachers of today, but there's gonna be new teachers coming in and there's teachers who are being prepared. So like, how are we all collectively thinking about this? And how are we working together to make sure that the work on the ground and that folks are ready to come in?
That's so important, that long-term focus, especially right now with education. A lot of the conversation can be just like, what are we doing tomorrow? Because like you've named COVID, hello, big wrench of, there's been a lot of reaction that's had to happen. But in order to make a long-term impact, you really gotta look beyond just who's right there, what our ideas are at the moment. If you're joining us right now, we're talking with Charles, our CEO and president here, about our mission, vision, and value change that we did earlier this year with Dr. Kevin Sansbury. If you haven't read our new mission or vision, they're on our website. You can go visit us at kcteach.org. I've got our little small slogan here. Our mission in a nutshell is to cultivate and sustain empowered educators in creating equitable classroom experiences for all students. Took a long time to get there, to that little nugget. And then our vision is to make an equitable education system a reality. And Charles has been talking with us about the process of that and the impact of that, of setting that direction. And I like that you use that word. Hopefully that's connecting with some individuals. Just even maybe at the beginning of the year, you set a vision or direction for yourself. If you do a New Year's resolution, to help chart, where am I wanting to go? And how can I hold myself to that so I don't wander off somewhere I didn't intend? I'll pass it off to you, Ariel. You want to start talking? We've spent a while talking about mission, vision. What are our values?
Yeah. So like Andrea said, if you're interested in knowing about our mission and our vision and our values, so I'm going to give you our values. So right now, our new values are anti-racism, community, excellence, growth, and love. I embody those. I feel like that's definitely how I choose to live my life. So I'm very happy to be working with KCTR and them having these values. But with that, I mean, I would love to know from you, Charles, like which of these are you currently really moved by? And like which one of these do you feel like currently shows up in your work? I know for myself, I think that love and community definitely shows up in my work. And I'm really moved by the fact that we have a value around anti-racism. That's just powerful for me as a Black woman to be working for an organization that's going to say that and live by that and work in that. So I'm interested to know from the both of you, and yeah, you, Charles, on so yeah, which one of those you currently feel moved by and which one shows up in your work?
Yeah. So I like to take a little spin, right? So like the one that shows up in my work, and I think most frequently, and I think about a lot, is community. And within that, right, like because it talks about like this work is human, and I cannot like think about. I feel as though oftentimes we talk about education. It is a very we sometimes discount the human nature and element of this work, whether it be our teachers, whether it be our kids, whether it be our community, our communities that we're serving in, our school system. And I think that's that value excites me because this is like it does take community and partnership, and it takes trust, right? Like it's not that we can do this alone or we can do this without the element of trust in that we're doing. And so I think that value makes, I think, KCTR's organization very unique in the work that we sit in that, and we see our residents, our grads, our students, ourselves as people in the team that worked collectively together, and that human element, and knowing that like this we have to bring that space, like we have to share that space, and we have to know that like, hey, we might show up one day and it might be a bad day, and it might and that's okay. And we're and I think like my hope is that the last couple of years has really taught us to live in that humanistic self, that sense.
Yeah.
But I would like to talk about like the value of anti-racism, if I may, because I do think like that's I mean that word has that phrase, it's complex, and I think like people have seen that as one to like has almost and also become weaponized in a way that is not great. And so I see that like I equate this to the work around and centering equity, and really thinking about how do we address just the true narratives that are out there, and how do we make sure that we are dismantling just the institutionalized racism that has been, and systemic racism that's been around pervasive for centuries, and acknowledge, right, like that, the history of our educational systems, the history of our, just teacher prep systems, and how do we make sure like we are doing the work as an organization, in equipping our educators to go into spaces to be effective, right? And so without that value, we lose some of that. Sorry.
Oh, that's so good. And I mean, that ties back to what you were saying too about the mechanism by which we get to this goal, the original goal, bringing more teachers for the betterment of students, having an equitable education, and anti-racism being a value, and values being what guide your work. How are we going to get to that mission? We're going to get to it through growth, through excellence, through pursuing anti-racism helps us check ourselves and know, are we getting towards that mission on the right path? We don't want to get towards that by just like taking some side road. So I think it's super powerful to have that there and aligning in what we're going to and empowering one another to give feedback and engage with the work in the most beneficial way possible.
Now, if I could, so for folks who are out there listening and like, oh, I want to apply and or join the team, and it sounds great, like anti-racism is a value, and y'all are all living into anti-racist, are fully anti-racist. That would be great, and we don't live in a bubble, right? Like I think that's a reality, and this is I always talk about like, have we arrived? And like, the answer is like, no, there is no arrival. I think this is about like I think what makes KCTR unique is like, we are committed to doing the work.
Yeah.
And this is about doing the work and about getting better and about improving. And so, yes, these are our vision, our mission, our values is stuff that we are aspiring to do. It's our North Star, what we are committed to do each and every day. And are we perfect in that? No. But are we sitting here coming in and ready to fight the good fight? The answer is yes. And I think like that's I think that's something that I want to make sure that is lifted up, because I know like there are some leaders who will sit and say like that, that their places like have arrived and that they're there and that we live into this fully each and every day. And that would just be disingenuous to say that people are doing that. And so.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I love growth being one of our values, is we're acknowledging that human side of like, we're not there, but we're in process of growing into consistently being excellent, consistently engaging in community, consistently acting through or aligning our actions towards anti-racism. So I think that's a great point, both for individuals coming to the org, or if people are, making notes of, hey, I want to have my own values. It's not necessarily a bar of I will do this every day, no matter what, but that's what you're committed to. That's how you want to show up in a space. And that really makes a difference. And to speak one more thing on that, with the anti-racism, there's an element of back to the, hey, how are we getting here, and dismantling white oppressive norms of even that idea of you got to do it perfect all the time is still a tenet of white oppressive culture. So just noticing how it can come up in so many ways and ensuring that we're taking a really transformative lens to all areas we do our work. Super important to point out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ariel, jump in.
No, I was just gonna say, Charles, was there anything else that you wanted to lean into? And if there was anything that if someone were to come, if someone were to come to KCTR and maybe hasn't been around and didn't realize like what this process would be and that we were going through this process, is there anything that you would want them to know further that for cohort 8, 9, 10, and for all the future, and then anyone that comes and works with KCTR?
Yeah. I think, gosh, one thing that what I would also share that we didn't talk about, right, is our initial mission was very Kansas City specific, and our newer mission and our newer vision, right, talks about communities, because, and we did this because we acknowledge that we're working in communities that are outside of Kansas City, Missouri proper. And so understanding that who we were working with, the communities we're working in, we wanted to make sure we were honoring those communities and not not devaluing or undervaluing them by only acknowledging Kansas City. And so that's been a shift. And I would say, like, as we bring in more cohorts and more people come on the team, right, like that, I think as we start looking at communities, our hope is that we will continue to grow and bring more people on that are even outside of Kansas City that are interested in wanting to do this work. Because we want to partner with folks who are committed to the work that we're doing.
Can you say a little more about that, of what is our commitment? So we have expanded where we work in case we've got multiple areas within the Kansas City metro area that aren't KCMO proper. But can you talk about that through line? Because it's not just random who we're partnering with.
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So it is, when we talk about different schools and different districts that we partner with, we are looking for schools that are in districts that are diverse, right? Whether it's like racially, ethnically diverse, socioeconomically diverse. We look for, diversity within the teacher core. And we also recognize that diversity within the teacher core might be hard in some places, just given the landscape that we're of teacher preparation. So we look for those elements. We also look for, what I will tell you in the 7 years I've been doing this work, regardless of where I've been, right? Like everyone is committed to seeing kids excel and achieve, right? And I think there are deliberate efforts that can be made to ensure that students receive what they need within the classroom, that every classroom is equitable, regardless of like ability, regardless of race, gender, socioeconomic status. And so like when thinking about all of that, right, like how are individuals, humans being prepared, set up for success to go into spaces to do that work and do that work well and supported in doing that work. And I think like that's where that's what makes KCTR unique, right? Yes, we have the residency year. That is an amazing experience. That is, through that year of service as an AmeriCorps member, working one of our partner schools, paired with a mentor teacher, right? You are getting into the context to understand the students, the community, the school system, and understanding like how all of that plays into the content that you're learning in coursework around how to ensure that you can have a classroom that is equitable for all students. And then with the coaching support that you're offered during the residency year, and then your first 3 years as teacher of record, right? Like that provides the supports to really create the conditions within a classroom that ensures that all students are able to be successful, and that it is. And when we talk about equity, right, like we're talking about like giving students what they need to be successful. Because I hope we would all want all students to feel good in school and to feel that they have opportunities available to them after high school, right? Like whatever they want to do, we as teachers, I always say like teachers are the gatekeepers to opportunity. And so when a teacher, it does not have a classroom that is set up for success for all students, and that classroom is not equitable, that student misses out. And to make up that lost year, you need at least 3 good years in order for that turnaround to happen. And so like, that is something that, when you talk about like what I'm constantly thinking about, like that's something I think about even with the work that we're doing, right? It's every child is my own children, and how to make sure that, all kids are having access to this inequitable education.
That's so good and so essential. and a great lens, I think, to think about, and is encouraging for me, even hearing, our the CEO of the organization I work for, having that as a value of really bringing that humanness to it, of this is a student that deserves what they need to succeed.
Absolutely.
And yeah, unfortunately, that's somewhat been polarized, some of these terminology in our society. But when we come down and boil it down, it really is, what does the student need in order to be successful and be set up for success in class? And hopefully that's something we can all rally behind and we're working towards.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you, Charles, for joining us today. Andrea and I and the whole world of Meta out there. I'm really excited that we were able to share this. I'm so excited about the work that we're going to continue to do, that we are doing, putting one foot in front of the other and not leaving into that perfectionism, as Andrea said, but also not taking the side road. So I definitely appreciate it. If anyone out there that's watched this or that's going to watch the replay, if you're interested in learning more about KCTR, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms, here, Instagram, connect with us professionally on LinkedIn. And if you're like, hey, I need to see more content like this, go follow us on YouTube. We have tons of videos. We have short, we have long. We even have some of our live sessions where you can get to know the organization, the staff, the residents, as we would love for you all to join us there. And then if you want to see our full mission, vision, values, head to our website. It's kcteach.org/about, or you could just head to the entire website because we think it's pretty wonderful and you can check that out as well. So Andrea, Charles, if you have anything else that you want to add, any other nuggets, please do. But Charles, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us today. So definitely appreciated it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us and unpacking this super foundational and transformative process of ensuring that the direction we're heading in as an org aligns with our desired outcome of an equitable education, and getting there through a process that's liberatory, anti-racist, and inclusive. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. This was great, and I'm just excited about the work that's ahead of us.
We'll
Awesome.
talk again. Thank you. Bye.